The sun had barely risen over Fort Bragg, casting pale streaks of light across the parade ground. Mist hovered low, curling around the neatly lined rows of soldiers stretching in formation. Sergeant Emily Carter adjusted her posture, trying to shake off the lingering fatigue that weighed on her like an invisible chain. Morning PT had always been grueling, but today felt heavier than usual. Her legs were sore, her lungs tight, yet she forced herself to maintain the rhythm. She had faced worse, or at least she had once far worse on distant deserts under the roar of gunfire and the shock of explosions. The colonel, a broad-shouldered man with sharp eyes and an easy laugh, strode in front of the formation. His boots struck the asphalt in a steady rhythm, and every soldier instinctively snapped to attention. Emily felt the familiar twinge of nerves, not from fear of failure, but from the memories buried beneath her uniform. She had worn the same insignia, marched the same formations, yet no one truly knew the battles she had survived. She was a survivor in a world that often mistook her quiet strength for weakness. "All right, soldiers," the colonel barked, voice cutting through the morning air. "Let's see what you've got. Full laps, no excuses." His gaze swept across the formation, lingering just a fraction too long on Emily. He raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement playing at the corners of his mouth. "What's the matter, Carter? You look like you're already done before the real work even starts." Emily's stomach twisted. She opened her mouth to explain, but the words caught in her throat. An old injury she had sustained overseas burned slightly when she took the first step into the line of running drills. To the colonel, it might have seemed like hesitation, laziness, or perhaps an attempt to shirk duty. He laughed softly, shaking his head. "Really? Already making excuses?" The surrounding soldiers glanced at each other, some exchanging barely audible whispers. A few had seen Emily struggle before and felt sympathetic, but no one dared speak up. The parade ground felt smaller now, the weight of judgment pressing on her shoulders as heavily as the pack she had carried in combat zones. Sweat began to bead along her forehead, not entirely from exertion. The embarrassment stung, but Emily's eyes remained calm, betraying none of the turmoil inside. She recalled the sand and dust of faraway battlefields, the shrill whistle of incoming fire, and the moments she had thought she might not survive. She remembered dragging wounded comrades to safety, steadying a shaking rifle in the chaos, and feeling the earth shatter beneath her when an IED detonated just feet away. Her body had been tested beyond imagination. Her injuries, invisible to most, were the remnants of that chaos. Today's PT test was nothing compared to the storms she had endured. But today, the colonel's laughter felt sharper than any bullet wound. Emily clenched her fists behind her back, inhaling the crisp morning air as if drawing strength from it. She could have argued, demanded understanding, or simply walked off. But she didn't. She had learned long ago that survival wasn't about protest. It was about endurance, about demonstrating resilience quietly, letting actions speak louder than words. And she would endure. "Move it, Carter," the colonel barked, snapping her back to the present. "I don't want to see you lagging behind." Her legs pumped, muscles screaming, but she pushed forward, keeping pace with the formation. The soldiers around her were a blur of sweat and determination, each absorbed in their own struggle, unaware of the silent war Emily fought with herself. Each step reminded her of distant deserts, the smell of smoke, the cries of comrades, the chaos that had defined her past. Here, she ran under a clear sky. There, she had run under fire, dodging death with every step. Still, she pressed on, hiding the pain that throbbed beneath her uniform. The colonel's eyes followed her, sharp and assessing. He had no idea of the strength she carried, the scars she bore, the nights she had survived alone in hostile territory. He saw only a soldier slowing in formation, unaware that the real battle was not on the parade ground, but engraved into her very being. Emily's mind wandered briefly, as it often did during moments of intense physical strain. She remembered her squad, the people who had laughed and cried with her in moments of terror, the ones she had watched vanish into smoke and dust. Memories of survival, guilt, and courage intertwined in a tapestry that no one on base could see. She had learned to hide these stories, tuck them away beneath layers of discipline and duty, presenting only the version of herself the army expected. But there was a part of her that longed for recognition, not for glory, but for understanding. Today, she thought, maybe that understanding would come. Maybe someone would see beyond the surface, past the uniform, past the apparent excuses. She inhaled deeply, drawing in the crisp air, and focused on her rhythm, her steps, her breathing. Each stride was deliberate, a silent declaration that she was more than a set of assumptions. The colonel shook his head again, clearly amused, and called out, "Don't tell me that injury is slowing you down. You've got this, soldier. Prove it." The words were meant to motivate, but to Emily, they felt like a challenge, a test of more than physical endurance. Could she reveal the strength hidden beneath her quiet exterior? Could she command respect without speaking, without pleading for understanding? As the formation continued its lapse, Emily felt the first stirrings of resolve. She wouldn't just endure, she would show them, in her own way, what true courage looked like. And when the moment came, she knew she would reveal a part of herself the colonel and her platoon had never imagined. For now, she ran. Step by step, breath by breath, memory by memory. Sweat stung her eyes, lungs burned, and muscles protested, but she pressed forward. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the ground, shadows that seemed to echo the battles she had survived. Emily's silence was a shield, her determination a weapon, her endurance a testament to the unspoken strength of soldiers who carried scars both visible and hidden. She could almost feel the weight of history on her shoulders, not just her own history, but the collective history of those who had sacrificed, fought, and survived. The whispers of her platoon faded into background noise as she focused inward, summoning the courage that had carried her through deserts and gunfire. Today, this morning, this moment of PT was just another test, but one she would not fail. Emily's eyes flicked toward the colonel again. The faint smile on his face belied his skepticism. He saw fatigue, he saw hesitation, but he could not see the battles she had fought, the sacrifices she had made. And that was okay. She would show him, in time, that the measure of a soldier was not just in endurance, but in resilience, courage, and the scars one bore proudly. The formation continued its lapse, the sun fully illuminating the parade ground. Sweat streamed down Emily's face, and yet her posture remained upright, controlled, defiant. Each step was an assertion, a quiet statement of who she truly was. The colonel laughed again, louder this time, shaking his head at what he still assumed was weakness. But Emily didn't flinch. She had survived worse. And soon, he would see that the strength of a soldier was never in the absence of struggle, but in the courage to endure, to persist, and to reveal the truth when the time was right. The morning sun had climbed higher over Fort Bragg, casting long shadows across the parade ground, but Emily Carter's mind had already traveled thousands of miles away, to the deserts of a foreign land, where sand choked the air and danger lurked behind every corner. Her legs still moved in rhythm with the formation, yet every step echoed with memories she had long tried to bury. This wasn't just physical strain, this was the ghost of war, the silent pulse of survival that had defined her life for years. Emily had been deployed 6 months earlier to a conflict zone far from the comforts of home. The air there was heavy with dust, smoke, and tension. Explosions punctuated the horizon in random, terrifying intervals, leaving craters in the earth It seemed as endless as the danger itself. Her squad had been tasked with clearing a small village suspected of harboring enemy combatants, a mission that had seemed straightforward until it turned into chaos within hours. She remembered the first firefight vividly. Gunfire tore through the streets, and the cries of the wounded echoed off concrete walls. Emily had ducked behind the remnants of a half-destroyed building, rifle raised, scanning the horizon for movement. Bullets ricocheted, embedding themselves in walls, mere inches from her head. Her training kicked in automatically, her reflexes honed to a razor-sharp edge. She moved quickly, shouting orders, coordinating her squad's maneuvers. Every action mattered. Hesitation could cost lives. Then came the IED. A sudden explosion beneath her feet flung Emily to the ground. Pain shot through her side, hot and blinding. Dust filled her lungs, making each breath a struggle. Debris rained down, and she could hear the distant screams of comrades caught in the blast. Despite the searing agony, Emily forced herself up. She had been trained to survive, and survival was never optional. Clenching her teeth, she dragged a wounded soldier to cover, ignoring the fire burning through her torso. Every scar she now carried had begun in moments like this chaotic, terrifying, but demanding action. Hours of relentless combat followed. Emily's squad faced ambushes, sniper fire, and improvised traps around every corner. Every day was a test of endurance, judgment, and courage. She learned quickly who she could trust and who couldn't be saved. Her body bore the marks of these battles, deep cuts, burns from explosions, and bruises that would never fully heal. Every injury told a story, and every scar was a reminder of the fine line between life and death. There were nights when Emily sat under the dim glow of a tent lantern, stitching minor wounds and checking the equipment that had kept her alive. Her hands shook from exhaustion, her mind replaying the chaos of the day. She thought of her family back home, the ones who believed she was safe and capable. She wondered if they could truly understand the horrors she witnessed or the burden she carried. The loneliness was heavy, a constant companion alongside the constant threat of danger. Emily's memories weren't just of fear, they were of responsibility and resilience. She remembered saving a fellow soldier whose leg had been trapped under rubble, the way his eyes had locked onto hers, pleading without words. She recalled coordinating medical evacuations under fire, balancing the need for speed with the terror surrounding her. Each decision carried weight, and mistakes were unforgiving. By the time she returned home, Emily's body had healed in many ways, but the emotional and physical remnants of those experiences remained, quietly embedded in her posture, her reflexes, and her hesitation during exercises that now seemed trivial by comparison. Back at Fort Bragg, during PT, the colonel's mocking laughter resonated with a hollow familiarity. He assumed weakness, but he couldn't see the echoes of gunfire or feel the twinge of injury that surged through Emily's muscles with every stride. The parade ground was safe, but the memory of the battlefield made each step heavier. Emily pressed on, not out of defiance, but from the ingrained discipline that had kept her alive for months under constant threat. There was a specific day etched sharply into Emily's mind. Her squad had been ambushed while attempting to secure a supply route. Mortar shells rained down, sending plumes of sand and smoke into the air. Emily had been thrown against a wall, her side slamming against a jagged corner. Pain exploded through her torso, but adrenaline pushed her forward. She spotted a soldier pinned under debris, and without hesitation, she moved him to safety, dragging him over uneven ground while under fire. It was in moments like these that the foundation of her courage had been built, not in absence of fear, but in action despite it. She remembered the officer who had watched from a distance, noting her leadership and composure amidst chaos. Emily had been praised, yet she rarely spoke of these moments, rarely allowed anyone to see the cost of her bravery. It was easier to blend into the background, to carry the invisible weight of scars and memories quietly. She didn't need recognition. She needed understanding, and understanding was often in short supply among those who had never faced similar battles. Her return to the United States had been bittersweet. Home was safe, familiar, and beautiful, but ordinary struggles now seemed minor in comparison to the life-or-death decisions she had faced overseas. Morning PT was an echo of that chaos in miniature, a test of endurance and spirit. But the Colonel's laughter reminded her how easily people could misunderstand strength. To him, she was struggling. To herself, she was measuring every movement, every breath, against the reality she had survived. Emily's comrades had often asked why she didn't share her experiences, why she carried herself quietly, never boasting of survival or bravery. She had smiled, shrugged, and said it wasn't necessary. Survival wasn't about recognition. It was about living to see another day, helping others survive, and bearing the scars with dignity. Those scars were hers alone, visible or hidden, tangible or emotional. They were the price of service, the proof of battles fought in ways most could never imagine. Now, as she ran laps under the Colonel's scrutinizing gaze, Emily's memory of that desert came alive with each pounding heartbeat. She recalled the fear, the exhilaration, the adrenaline that had sharpened her mind and strengthened her body. She remembered the promises she had made to herself and to her squad, to never give up, to protect, and to survive. These principles guided her now, even in the seemingly mundane trials of PT. Emily's eyes flicked across the formation, noting her fellow soldiers' effort, determination, and fatigue. They had not seen the worst of war, and most would never know the burden she carried silently. Yet they would see her strength eventually, not in words, but in action. Each stride was a testament to resilience forged in combat, a quiet assertion that her past did not define her in weakness, but in courage and endurance. The Colonel's laughter echoed again, sharper now, almost impatient. He still assumed excuses. Emily's jaw tightened. She knew the moment would come when she could no longer remain silent, when the truth of her survival and her scars would demand acknowledgement. But for now, she ran, each step carrying memories, pain, and the indomitable will to endure. As the sun rose higher, illuminating every detail of the parade ground, Emily's shadow stretched long and unwavering. She pressed on, her breath rhythmic, her movements deliberate, every muscle responding to years of training and experiences that few could comprehend. She was more than a soldier struggling through PT. She was a survivor, a leader, a testament to courage born in fire and tempered in the crucible of battle. And somewhere beneath the mockery and laughter, the Colonel was unaware that he stood before someone whose past had been forged in unimaginable chaos, someone whose visible strength today was only a fraction of the courage she carried hidden beneath her uniform. The stage was set, and the story of Emily Carter's true resilience was only beginning to unfold. The sun now sat higher above the base, illuminating the rows of soldiers as they moved in unison across the parade ground. Sweat clung to Emily Carter's uniform, and her muscles burned with each stride. Yet the physical strain was nothing compared to the tension brewing beneath the surface. Every glance from the Colonel felt like an assessment, every barked instruction a judgment on her very character. He did not see the survivor before him. He saw hesitation, weakness, perhaps laziness. His laughter, once casual, had sharpened, a reminder that assumptions could cut deeper than bullets ever had. Emily's mind wandered briefly, as it often did in moments of exertion. She remembered the faces of the soldiers she had saved, the ones she could not. She recalled the deafening roar of explosions and the chaos of streets she had once navigated under fire. Each memory brought a pang of pain that her body felt with every stride, a physical echo of battles fought thousands of miles away. Yet here, The only visible consequence was a soldier lagging slightly behind the formation. The colonel's impatience could not comprehend the hidden scars etched into her every movement. "Carter," the colonel barked, voice carrying across the parade ground. "I said keep up. Do I need to call this a failure?" His tone was sharp, mocking, challenging. Soldiers nearby stiffened, unsure whether to intervene or remain silent. Emily felt the familiar tension coil in her chest, a mix of frustration, fatigue, and suppressed fury. She clenched her fists behind her back, forcing herself to maintain a steady pace. She would not rise to the bait, not yet. Yet the whispers began. Some soldiers exchanged glances, curious, empathetic, unsure of what to say. Others murmured skepticism, echoing the colonel's assumption that she was simply not giving her best. Emily caught fragments of their conversation. "She's always slow. I wonder if she's just faking it." Another voice, quieter, more reflective. "No, there's something different about her. I've seen her in drills, and she moves. Like she's done this before? Like she's survived something we can't even imagine." Emily's eyes scanned the platoon, noting these reactions. She felt a mixture of warmth and isolation. Even when misunderstood, even when judged unfairly, she maintained control. The battlefield had taught her that panic served no purpose, that clarity and composure were more powerful than anger. Here, in the relative calm of Fort Bragg, those lessons still applied. She would endure. She would demonstrate strength, but on her terms, when the moment was right. The colonel's brow furrowed as he watched her struggle, oblivious to the history behind her hesitation. "What's your problem, Carter?" he demanded. "Is this some kind of excuse? If you can't handle PT, maybe you shouldn't be here." Laughter bubbled from the nearby soldiers, some nervously masking discomfort, others genuinely amused by the perceived spectacle. Emily's jaw tightened, but she did not reply. She would not dignify mockery with argument. Words were unnecessary when actions could speak more clearly than any explanation. Her mind flashed back to the desert again. She remembered navigating through hostile streets, dodging sniper fire, coordinating medical evacuations, and feeling explosions ripple beneath her feet. Every scar she bore was a reminder of those moments. They were proof of endurance, of courage, of leadership under fire. Yet here, on a parade ground, they remained invisible. The colonel's assumptions cut deeper than any bullet, but Emily carried a quiet defiance, a determination that only those who had faced true danger could understand. A sudden whistle pierced the air, signaling a new round of drills. Emily moved with renewed focus, muscles screaming but mind sharp. She noted the colonel's posture, the subtle smirk on his lips as he expected her to falter again. Around her, the platoon strained, sweat pouring from their bodies, lungs burning with exertion. Yet in the midst of physical fatigue, Emily's emotional tension grew heavier. She was a storm contained within discipline, a quiet force ready to reveal itself when the time demanded. Some soldiers began to take note. Private Daniels, a young recruit with a keen eye, noticed the subtle control in her movements, the precise way she adjusted her pace to conserve energy while maintaining form. "She's not just struggling," he whispered to a fellow soldier. "She's managing something we don't see. There's more to her than just PT." Emily caught the comment in the corner of her ear, but did not react. Recognition from peers was not the goal. Survival, resilience, and eventual acknowledgement on her own terms were. The colonel, growing impatient, increased the intensity. "Faster, Carter! Or are you planning to quit in front of everyone?" His laughter was sharp, intended to provoke a response. Emily's pulse quickened, not from exertion, but from anticipation. The time would come to reveal the truth, to show what had been hidden beneath layers of uniform and discipline. Yet she remained calm, each movement precise, each breath measured. The challenge was no longer just physical, it was mental, emotional, and moral. Her body began to betray her, muscles trembling with fatigue. The pain from old injuries flared sharply, but Emily adjusted, leaning on years of training and sheer determination. She had endured much worse under circumstances far more dangerous. Here, the stakes were perception, respect, and judgment, but the principles were the same. Endure, survive, and maintain composure. The colonel's laughter and the whispers of her peers were merely background noise in a storm of focus and inner strength. Emily's eyes darted momentarily to the horizon, imagining the desert she had left behind. Sand blowing in every direction, the roar of gunfire, the chaos of life and death decisions. It was a world she had navigated with courage and skill. The scars she carried were evidence of survival, proof that she had been tempered in the crucible of war. And soon, they would see what she had always been capable of, not just a soldier enduring PT, but a warrior who had faced death and returned stronger, scarred but undefeated. The colonel, oblivious, continued to bark orders, pushing the platoon harder. Sweat streamed down Emily's face, stinging her eyes, but she did not falter. Her breathing remained controlled, her posture firm. She allowed the other soldiers to strain beside her, some faltering, others pushing past limits, yet all unaware of the quiet storm that had brought her to this point. Every step was deliberate, every stride a statement of resilience invisible to the untrained eye. A subtle shift occurred among the platoon. Soldiers who had once doubted Emily now began to notice the controlled precision in her movements. Lieutenant Harris, standing off to the side, leaned closer and whispered, "There's something different about her. Disciplined, precise. Not what it looks like." Emily did not respond. She let their curiosity build. Let them wonder. Let the colonel assume weakness. The revelation would be far more powerful than argument or explanation. The tension on the parade ground thickened, a palpable force pressing on every soldier. Emily's heartbeat quickened, not from exhaustion, but from the awareness that the moment of truth was approaching. She had endured ridicule, assumptions, and doubt. Now she would show that her strength went far beyond what any physical test could measure. The colonel's laughter, once dominant, now felt almost hollow, a fading echo against the storm of courage building silently within her. Her memory drifted again to a specific incident overseas. A firefight in a narrow alley, smoke choking her lungs, gunfire ricocheting off walls. She had saved 3 comrades pinned under debris, risking her own life repeatedly. Pain tore through her body, but she did not falter. She had learned that strength was not always about speed or endurance. It was about persistence, courage, and the ability to act when others could not. Those lessons guided her now, every stride reinforcing her silent resolve. Emily's shadow stretched long across the parade ground, a silent testament to the determination she carried. The colonel barked one final order, expecting her to falter. Instead, she adjusted her pace, tightened her core, and pressed forward. Every eye watched, some skeptical, some curious, all unaware of the history embedded in her movements. The whispers grew louder, a mix of speculation and awe, yet Emily remained focused, letting anticipation and suspense build. The story of her true resilience had not yet been revealed, but it was coming. Each step, each breath, each movement was a declaration. Emily Carter was not merely a soldier struggling through PT. She was a survivor, a warrior forged in fire, carrying scars and memories invisible to the untrained eye. And the colonel, along with the rest of the platoon, would soon understand that true strength was never about appearances, but about courage, resilience, and the scars earned in the crucible of battle. The sun hung high over the parade ground, glaring down on the soldiers like an impartial judge. Sweat streamed down Emily Carter's face, soaking the fabric of her uniform. dripping into the small cuts and bruises left from previous training sessions. Her lungs burned with every breath, and her legs shook with fatigue. But it was not merely exhaustion that weighed on her. It was the mounting tension, the unspoken judgment of every officer and soldier around her. The colonel's laughter had grown louder, sharper, a weapon aimed directly at her pride. "Carter, keep moving. Or are you planning to quit in front of the entire platoon?" The colonel's voice cut through the morning air like a whip. He didn't see hesitation. He didn't see struggle. He saw defiance and laziness disguised as weakness. His broad, commanding frame blocked the sun for a moment, and Emily's eyes flicked toward him, calm but resolute. Today, she would not simply endure. Today, she would demand recognition, not through argument, but through action. Her muscles trembled, her body begging for relief, but Emily did not falter. Step by step, she moved forward, each stride a testament to years of survival and discipline. Memories of distant deserts, sandstorms, gunfire, and chaos surged through her mind. She remembered dragging a fellow soldier from the debris of an explosion, ignoring the searing pain in her side. She remembered holding a dying comrade, whispering reassurances she didn't entirely feel, keeping her own fear in check so others could survive. All those moments of courage now converged in this one decision. It was time to reveal herself fully, to show what lay hidden beneath uniform and discipline. A hush fell over the platoon as whispers spread, the soldiers sensing a change in the air. Even the colonel's laughter faltered, replaced by a thin line of suspicion and curiosity. Emily slowed her pace, deliberately, feeling every eye on her. She was no longer running in response to the colonel's commands. She was running toward a moment of truth. She reached the center of the formation and came to a deliberate halt, her boots kicking up small clouds of dust on the asphalt. Silence fell like a shroud. The colonel's brow furrowed. What are you doing, Carter?" "Finish your laps." His voice carried authority, but uncertainty now edged it. Emily's chest rose and fell, controlled, steady. She was calm, resolute, and utterly unafraid. The soldiers around her shifted uneasily, sensing the gravity of the moment. Something extraordinary was about to happen, and none of them could yet anticipate the courage about to be revealed. Slowly, Emily reached for the zipper of her jacket, a small motion that seemed to stretch across the entire parade ground. Her hands were steady, deliberate, betraying none of the tremor her body felt from exertion and latent pain. Every soldier held their breath. Private Daniels, the young recruit who had begun to suspect there was more to her than appearances suggested, leaned forward slightly, curiosity sparking in his eyes. The colonel's gaze narrowed, the amusement on his face giving way to confusion. The zipper slid down with a soft, metallic whisper, the sound amplified by the tension in the air. Emily lifted the jacket from her shoulders, revealing the fabric beneath once pristine, now stretched and marked by subtle burns and scars. She paused, letting the moment resonate. The colonel's smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of disbelief. Whispers swept through the formation, the platoon suddenly alert, their eyes widening at the sight. Emily's chest was marred with deep, jagged scars, evidence of her survival through explosions and gunfire. Each line told a story of pain endured, of life reclaimed, of courage exercised when fear threatened to paralyze. The soldiers stared, unable to look away. Some murmured softly, astonishment and admiration blending. Others simply gasped, as though the truth had struck them with the force of a battlefield shockwave. The colonel himself seemed frozen, the weight of his misjudgment pressing down on him. "Sergeant Carter," he began, his voice faltering, the laughter gone. His eyes moved over her scars, as though he could see each story embedded in the lines of burned flesh and healed wounds. I had no idea." Emily's lips pressed into a calm line. She did not need words. Her presence, Her scars, her quiet dignity spoke volumes. Years of discipline, survival, and silent endurance converged into this moment, rendering the colonel's assumptions irrelevant. The soldiers around her slowly shifted from skepticism to awe, their previous judgments replaced with respect. They had underestimated her, and the truth had a power no mockery or reprimand could undo. Private Daniels finally whispered, unable to contain himself. She survived all of that, and still leads us like this? Others nodded, some eyes glistening with admiration. The colonel's face, usually so controlled and commanding, softened. He stepped forward cautiously, each movement measured. For the first time, he did not issue orders or mock. He observed. He acknowledged. He learned. Emily lowered her gaze slightly, allowing the impact of her revelation to settle. She had expected a range of reactions: mockery, awe, perhaps discomfort, but she did not anticipate the subtle shift in power that now permeated the parade ground. Respect was not demanded. It was given, and she had earned it, not with words or boasts, but with courage and transparency. The colonel finally spoke again, voice subdued but sincere. "Sergeant Carter, I owe you an apology. I misjudged you, and I see now the depth of your strength, your courage, your sacrifice. It's extraordinary." Emily nodded slightly, a small, dignified acknowledgement. There was no triumphalism in her expression, only quiet resolution. She had revealed herself fully, and the lesson was not just for the colonel, it was for the entire platoon. Whispers of admiration rippled through the soldiers. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others' eyes glistened as they absorbed the weight of Emily's journey. She had survived explosions, combat, and chaos that none of them could imagine. Yet here she stood, scarred but unbroken, a living testament to resilience, courage, and unwavering duty. Her scars were no longer hidden. They were a symbol, a story, a silent command to respect the unseen battles everyone carries. Emily slowly pulled the jacket back onto her shoulders, the motion deliberate, controlled, dignified. She had revealed what needed to be seen. She had transformed mockery into respect, skepticism into admiration, and misunderstanding into clarity. The colonel stepped closer, this time offering a nod of genuine recognition rather than critique. "Sergeant," he said, voice firmer, "thank you for your service, for your courage, and for showing us all what real strength looks like." The platoon followed suit, clapping quietly, some soldiers offering verbal acknowledgments, others simply standing in silent respect. Emily felt a weight lift, not from the removal of physical burdens, but from the recognition that her courage had finally been seen. She had endured judgment, ridicule, and doubt, and now, with quiet dignity, she had commanded respect without a single boast. Her thoughts drifted briefly, back to the desert, to the explosions, to the moments that had left her body and spirit marked. Those experiences had shaped her, yes, but they had not defined her. Here, she had reclaimed the narrative. Here, she had turned vulnerability into strength, pain into purpose, and scars into a testament of survival. The colonel, the platoon, and every witness had learned an invaluable lesson. True strength is often invisible until revealed, and courage cannot be measured by physical endurance alone. Emily adjusted her stance, returning to formation. She no longer ran out of obligation or pressure. She moved with purpose, her body and mind aligned in a harmony forged through battle, endurance, and resilience. The colonel's laughter never returned, replaced instead with a quiet respect that resonated far deeper than any shouted command. The soldiers around her absorbed the lesson silently, inspired not only by what they saw, but by what they understood. Sometimes, the greatest battles are the ones no one witnesses until the right moment. For Emily, the breaking point had passed. She had endured ridicule, hidden pain, and skepticism, and emerged stronger, commanding respect not through argument, but through courage and revelation. The parade ground, once a place of judgment and expectation, now bore witness to the quiet power of resilience. Every soldier present would remember this moment, the moment Sergeant Emily Carter transformed misunderstanding into acknowledgement, and scars into a symbol of strength. And as the formation resumed, the colonel stepped back, watching with newfound awareness. Emily's eyes held a quiet fire, a determination that no doubt, mockery, or challenge could extinguish. The lesson was clear. Appearances could be deceiving, strength was multifaceted, and courage often wore scars as silent proof. The breaking point had passed, but it had revealed far more than anyone could have anticipated. The morning air seemed heavier after the reveal, as if the very wind had absorbed the shock of Emily Carter's courage. The parade ground, once alive with the rhythmic sounds of footsteps and commands, now held an almost sacred silence. Soldiers shifted in place, glancing at one another, processing what they had just witnessed. Emily stood tall, jacket back on her shoulders, her posture unwavering. Her battle scars, now seen, had transformed the atmosphere. They were no longer hidden. They carried a story that demanded attention, respect, and reflection. The colonel, usually so commanding and unflinching, stood frozen for a long moment, his eyes scanning the crisscrossed lines of scars etched across her torso. The laughter that had so freely left his lips hours before now felt distant, almost inappropriate. He opened his mouth, closed it, and took a cautious step forward. "Sergeant Carter," he said finally, voice low but firm. I had no idea. I misjudged you. Your courage. Your resilience. It's extraordinary." Emily inclined her head slightly, acknowledging the words, but did not speak. Words had never been necessary to convey her story. Her scars spoke louder than any explanation ever could. The soldiers around her, a mix of young recruits and seasoned veterans, exchanged looks of awe and quiet admiration. Some whispered softly, still processing the reality that the soldier they had underestimated carried experiences they could barely imagine. Others' eyes glistened, moved by the gravity of what they had witnessed. Private Daniels, who had long suspected there was more to Emily than met the eye, finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. She survived all of that, and she's still here, leading us." Murmurs of agreement spread through the platoon. The collective realization settled over them. True courage isn't always loud or visible, and sometimes the greatest battles are fought in silence, far from recognition or applause. The colonel stepped closer, his posture softening, shoulders no longer rigid with authority, but slightly hunched in contemplation. He gestured toward Emily. "I've spent too long judging by appearances," he admitted. "Today, I've learned something invaluable. Strength isn't always what it seems. And courage often wears scars." His eyes met hers, and there was a moment of unspoken understanding. He had assumed weakness, but Emily had revealed the depth of her resilience without uttering a single boast. Around them, the platoon began to recover from the initial shock. Soldiers straightened, shoulders squared, expressions shifting from skepticism to respect. Some nodded subtly, others murmured words of acknowledgement. Emily could feel the weight of their collective gaze, but it was no longer judgmental. It was reverent. She had transformed perception with a single act of quiet courage, and the impact rippled through the ranks. As the formation slowly resumed its movements, Emily felt a strange sense of release. The tension that had coiled within her for years, the constant need to prove herself silently, began to ease. The burden of carrying invisible scars had been immense, and now, for the first time in a long while, it felt slightly lighter. Her actions had shifted the dynamic on the parade ground. Respect had replaced ridicule, and acknowledgement had replaced assumptions. The colonel, now standing slightly apart, observed the platoon with a renewed perspective. He had witnessed firsthand the disconnect between appearances and reality. Emily's struggle, once perceived as hesitation or weakness, had been rooted in history, experience, and pain far beyond the understanding of those who had not faced true combat. It was a lesson he would carry into every leadership decision moving forward. Never underestimate the unseen battles of those under command. Emily, sensing the moment, allowed herself a small, controlled exhale. The physical strain still gripped her body, but the emotional tension had shifted. Her courage had spoken louder than any explanation ever could. For her, this was not about vindication. It was about acknowledgement, not just from the colonel, but from the platoon she had fought alongside, endured alongside, and now led. Each soldier's silent nod, each glance of admiration, was proof that the lesson had been received. Private Daniels lingered near the edge of the formation, eyes still wide. "I've never met anyone like her," he whispered to a fellow soldier. "She doesn't just survive. She leads, even after everything she's been through." The other soldier nodded, realizing the truth in the statement. Emily's scars were a testament not only to survival, but to leadership, resilience, and the courage to face judgment openly. The platoon had learned something fundamental about the nature of bravery, and Emily's revelation had made it impossible to ignore. The colonel finally spoke again, this time addressing the entire formation. "Today, we witnessed something extraordinary. Sergeant Carter has shown us that strength isn't measured by speed, endurance, or obedience alone. It's measured by courage, resilience, and the ability to persevere despite unseen hardships. Let this be a lesson for all of you." His voice carried authority, but it was tempered with respect. The soldiers listened intently, absorbing the magnitude of the moment. Emily's revelation had reshaped not just perception, but understanding. In the quiet that followed, Emily's mind drifted briefly back to her deployment. She recalled the friends she had lost, the battles she had fought, and the moments she had doubted her own survival. Those memories had shaped her into the soldier she was today, a survivor who had endured far beyond the limits of ordinary expectation. Now, standing on the parade ground, she realized that the acknowledgement she had longed for was not merely personal, it was transformative for everyone who had witnessed her courage. The platoon began to move again, drills resuming under the colonel's watchful eye. Yet there was a difference now, a subtle shift in energy, in posture, in attitude. The soldiers moved with renewed determination, inspired by the example Emily had set. Her courage had not only silenced ridicule, but had also instilled a sense of purpose and respect that permeated the ranks. The lessons of battlefield resilience had found fertile ground in the hearts of those around her. Emily continued to lead, every stride deliberate, every command precise. The colonel observed from a distance, no longer dismissive, no longer mocking. He had learned the hard lesson that assumptions can be dangerously misleading, and that true strength often lies hidden beneath the surface. Emily's quiet composure, her unwavering determination, and the scars she carried were proof of a resilience that could not be measured by physical tests alone. As the sun climbed higher, bathing the parade ground in golden light, Emily felt a sense of calm determination settle over her. The reveal had shifted something fundamental, not just her own position within the platoon, but the understanding of courage, sacrifice, and leadership itself. Every soldier had witnessed that courage firsthand, and the impact would linger long after the morning drills concluded. The colonel finally approached Emily again, this time with a more personal acknowledgement. "Sergeant," he said quietly, voice steady but sincere, "thank you. Not just for showing us what strength looks like, but for reminding us all that courage often wears scars seen or unseen. Today, you've taught a lesson we won't forget." Emily nodded, feeling the weight of his words resonate deeply. This was the recognition she had earned not through argument or protest, but through courage, resilience, and truth. Around her, the soldiers began to mirror the shift in the colonel's demeanor. Whispers of admiration grew louder, nods of respect were exchanged, and a sense of unity emerged. Emily's scars were no longer a source of misunderstanding. They were a symbol of survival, resilience, and leadership. She had transformed ridicule into respect, assumptions into understanding, and fear into acknowledgement. As the formation disbanded, soldiers approached Emily quietly, offering words of gratitude, encouragement, and admiration. Private Daniels lingered again, eyes bright with respect. "Sergeant," he said softly, "I hope one day I can lead even a fraction of the way you do." Emily offered a small, calm smile, acknowledging the sentiment without arrogance. Leadership, she knew, was not about being seen as perfect. It was about demonstrating courage and integrity in every action, every choice, every moment. The morning continued, drills and routines resuming, yet the parade ground felt forever changed. Emily's revelation had reshaped the perception of every soldier present, from the newest recruit to the seasoned officers. Courage, resilience, and strength had been made visible, and the lesson could not be unlearned. Her battle scars had become a story, a silent testament to the power of endurance, the cost of service, and the indomitable spirit of a soldier who had faced death and returned stronger than ever. By the time the sun reached its zenith, Emily Carter's name had quietly become a symbol on the base, not just of survival, but of courage and leadership. The colonel's earlier laughter was now a distant memory, replaced with a profound understanding of the weight she carried and the strength she embodied. Every soldier who had witnessed her reveal would carry the lesson forward. True bravery cannot be measured by appearances, and true strength often lies beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. The sun now shone brightly over Fort Bragg, casting a warm glow across the parade ground, where the soldiers moved with a newfound sense of purpose. The morning's events, the reveal of Emily Carter's battle scars and the colonel's silent acknowledgement, had transformed the atmosphere. There was no longer a sense of judgment, mockery, or doubt. Instead, an unspoken reverence permeated the ranks, as though each soldier had glimpsed the true meaning of resilience and courage through Emily's quiet but powerful act. Emily stood off to the side, catching her breath and allowing herself a rare moment of reflection. Her body throbbed from the intense PT, but her mind was occupied with far weightier considerations. Today had been a turning point, not just for her, but for the entire platoon. For years, she had hidden her scars, both visible and invisible, carrying the burden alone. Now she had revealed them, not for validation, but to teach a lesson about strength, perseverance, and courage. The colonel approached cautiously, his eyes no longer filled with amusement, but with curiosity and respect. He walked alongside her, his boots crunching softly on the asphalt. "Sergeant," he began, voice measured, "I have led troops for decades, and yet today I realized how little I sometimes understand. You've taught me something I won't forget." Emily glanced at him, her expression calm and composed, yet there was a flicker of gratitude in her eyes. She had long wished for acknowledgement, not out of vanity, but because recognition of her experiences validated the struggles she had endured silently for so long. He continued, "You've shown us all that courage isn't always loud or dramatic. It's quiet, patient, and persistent. It's enduring hardship without complaint, acting with integrity under pressure, and leading even when the world doubts you. I've misjudged you, and for that, I apologize." Emily inclined her head slightly, accepting the apology with dignity. The words were important, but the real acknowledgement had come not from the apology itself, but from his understanding, the recognition that true strength often lay hidden, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Meanwhile, the soldiers of the platoon had begun to gather around, lingering after the drill with renewed focus and admiration. Private Daniels approached first, tentative but eager. "Sergeant," he said softly, "I don't think I've ever seen anyone handle what you've been through. And still lead like you do. It's inspiring." Emily allowed herself a small smile, acknowledging the sentiment without pride. She had learned long ago that true leadership was not about accolades or praise, but about inspiring others through action, resilience, and example. Other soldiers followed, sharing quiet words of gratitude, encouragement, and respect. Some admitted they had doubted her. Others confessed they had been unaware of the hidden battles she had fought. Each acknowledgement was a small affirmation, a recognition that her scars, once a source of misjudgment, were now a symbol of resilience, endurance, and courage. Emily listened patiently, letting their words sink in. Her role had shifted. She was no longer just a soldier enduring PT or hiding her scars. She had become a living example of courage and perseverance, a teacher without needing a classroom. Emily's thoughts drifted back to the battlefield, to the moments when life had hung by a thread. She remembered dragging wounded comrades to safety, facing gunfire with no option but to act, and enduring pain that tested the limits of body and mind. Those memories had been her private burden for years, hidden beneath layers of discipline and silence. Today, she had transformed those burdens into lessons, demonstrating that strength was not defined by appearances, speed, or endurance alone. It was defined by resilience, courage, and integrity in the face of adversity. The colonel watched her closely, noticing the subtle shift in her demeanor. She carried herself with calm authority, her posture unbroken despite exhaustion. There was a quiet strength that emanated from her, a force born not of physical prowess, but of experience, courage, and unwavering determination. He realized that leadership, he had assumed, could be measured by command or outward confidence. But Emily had demonstrated that true leadership often came from silent resilience, earned through hardship and action. "You've changed the platoon today," the colonel said quietly, almost to himself. "Not just in how they see you, but in how they see themselves." "They've witnessed real courage." Emily nodded slightly. She understood the weight of his words. Leadership was not about commanding respect. It was about earning it. And the most profound lessons were learned through example rather than instruction. Today, she had given her platoon a lesson they would carry long after their physical drills ended. The platoon, now fully aware of Emily's courage, moved differently during the remainder of the morning exercises. Soldiers pushed themselves harder, inspired not by the colonel's commands, but by the example Emily had set. Her resilience, her composure, and her courage became a guiding force, a subtle but powerful influence on their performance and morale. Even those who had doubted her began to reevaluate their assumptions, recognizing that strength and bravery were often invisible until revealed. Emily took a quiet moment for herself, stepping aside to rest. She felt the familiar ache in her muscles, the faint sting of old injuries that had once seemed like permanent reminders of vulnerability. But today, those scars felt different. They were no longer merely reminders of pain. They were symbols of survival, courage, and leadership. She had turned vulnerability into strength and silence into a powerful statement that resonated far beyond the parade ground. The colonel lingered nearby, observing her in thoughtful silence. For decades, he had led troops with authority, relying on discipline, commands, and physical performance to measure strength. Today, he had witnessed a different kind of power, quiet, unassuming, but undeniable. Emily Carter had taught him that true courage often comes in subtle, unexpected forms, and that the scars people carry, visible or hidden, can hold lessons that far surpass any drill or test of endurance. Private Daniels, still standing nearby, finally found the courage to speak again. "Sergeant," he said, voice steady now, "I hope one day I can lead like you do." with courage, integrity, and resilience. Emily looked at him, her expression calm but encouraging. "Leadership isn't about perfection," she said softly. "It's about facing challenges, learning from them, and inspiring others by example. You'll find your own strength in time, and the lessons you learn from others will guide you." As the morning continued, Emily observed the subtle changes in her platoon. Soldiers carried themselves with renewed confidence, supporting each other more consciously and pushing beyond previous limits. Her presence, once a quiet force within the formation, now radiated inspiration, influencing morale, determination, and cohesion. Today, she had transformed not only perception, but the very atmosphere of the platoon, demonstrating that leadership, courage, and strength often transcend appearances and assumptions. Emily's mind drifted briefly to her family, thinking of how proud they would be if they could witness this moment. Not for the recognition, but for the acknowledgement that she had faced unimaginable challenges and remained steadfast. Her scars, both physical and emotional, had become symbols of endurance and resilience. She had turned past struggles into lessons, showing that courage could inspire, teach, and transform even those who had not shared her experiences. The colonel, still observing, finally broke the silence. "Sergeant Carter," he said, voice filled with quiet respect, "thank you for your service, for your courage, and for showing us all what true strength looks like. Today, you've not only revealed your scars, you've revealed a lesson none of us will forget." Emily inclined her head, acknowledging the words without pride. The recognition was meaningful, yes, but it was the transformation of perception, understanding, and morale that truly mattered. By the time the morning drills concluded, the parade ground had shifted from a place of routine physical exertion to a space of reflection, learning, and admiration. Emily Carter's courage had touched every soldier present, leaving an indelible impression. Her scars, once hidden and misunderstood, had become symbols of resilience, survival, and leadership. She had endured judgment, ridicule, and assumptions, and emerged not just unbroken, but stronger, inspiring those around her to recognize the courage within themselves and others. The revelation of Emily Carter's scars had done more than silence the colonel's laughter. It had set in motion a transformation that spread quietly but unmistakably throughout the entire unit. Soldiers who had once focused solely on drill times and physical performance now carried an added awareness. Strength was not always measured by speed, endurance, or visible skill. It was measured by resilience, courage, and integrity. Emily's example became a subtle guidepost, a standard by which other soldiers began to evaluate themselves and their comrades. Even the colonel, whose leadership style had long relied on authority and expectation, began to reconsider his approach. Observing Emily, he realized that true leadership was not only about discipline or command, it was about understanding, empathy, and recognizing the unseen challenges that soldiers carried. Her courage had illuminated a blind spot in his leadership philosophy. Assumptions based solely on appearances could be dangerously misleading. For the first time in years, he felt compelled to listen more, observe more, and judge less. Across the base, word of Emily's story spread. Soldiers discussed the morning in hushed tones, admiring her resilience, reflecting on their own experiences, and reconsidering what it truly meant to be brave. Private Daniels, now emboldened by Emily's example, found himself encouraging his fellow recruits, offering support where before he would have been silent. Others began to reach out to one another with a newfound sense of camaraderie, recognizing that everyone carried burdens, some visible, many hidden. Emily had reminded them that courage could be quiet, personal, and yet profoundly influential. The colonel watched these changes with a mixture of pride and humility. He had been challenged, proven wrong, and yet enlightened by a soldier whose experiences far exceeded his expectations. He began to incorporate lessons from Emily into his leadership, emphasizing the importance of understanding, mentorship, and acknowledgement. Orders and drills remained, but they were now tempered with reflection and respect. Emily had demonstrated that authority could coexist with empathy, and that respect earned through example could achieve more than commands enforced through fear. Emily herself noticed the subtle shifts in behavior. Soldiers moved with increased confidence, supported one another more openly, and carried themselves with a sense of purpose that extended beyond mere physical performance. She quietly encouraged these changes, offering guidance and support when approached, never seeking recognition for herself. Her role had evolved. She was no longer just a soldier maintaining personal discipline. She had become a beacon of courage, resilience, and leadership within the platoon. One afternoon, during a debriefing session, the colonel addressed the unit directly. "Today," he began, voice carrying authority softened by reflection, "we have seen what true courage looks like. Sergeant Carter has shown us that strength isn't always visible, that resilience is often hidden beneath the surface, and that leadership is earned through example, not assumption. Let us carry this lesson forward in everything we do." His words were met with quiet nods, murmurs of agreement, and a sense of shared understanding that had not existed before. Emily observed the platoon's reactions with a sense of quiet satisfaction. The lesson she had imparted extended beyond herself. It was shaping the culture of the unit. Soldiers began to approach challenges with greater determination, support one another more consciously, and reflect on their own strengths and limitations. Emily's scars had become a symbol, a reminder that perseverance, courage, and resilience were qualities to be cultivated, recognized, and honored in oneself and others. The colonel, now working closely with Emily, began to understand the depth of her influence. He realized that leadership required more than discipline. It demanded insight, empathy, and recognition of the human elements underlying performance. Emily had demonstrated that courage and strength could inspire transformation, not through words alone, but through example. Her presence, her actions, and her visible scars had challenged him to grow, reconsider his assumptions, and embrace a more nuanced understanding of leadership. Private Daniels, inspired by Emily, began to mentor newer recruits, sharing lessons about resilience, courage, and integrity. He encouraged them to view challenges as opportunities for growth and to support one another through unseen struggles. Emily's influence, initially personal and silent, had become a force that rippled through the unit, shaping attitudes, morale, and cohesion. Her courage had proven that one person's example could ignite change far beyond what seemed possible. Emily reflected on her journey as she walked across the base after drills. The memory of distant battlefields, explosions, and the faces of comrades she had lost lingered, but so did the recognition she had earned. Her scars, once symbols of survival alone, had become tools of inspiration and education. She had transformed private pain into public courage, personal endurance into a lesson for others. And in doing so, she had not only influenced her platoon, but had reshaped the approach of leadership at the highest level. The colonel observed Emily from a distance, considering the lessons she had imparted. He realized that strength, resilience, and courage were qualities that could not be measured by PT scores, rankings, or outward appearances alone. Emily's experience had challenged him to see the deeper, often invisible battles faced by soldiers every day. He began to mentor his officers differently, encouraging empathy, reflection, and recognition of the hidden struggles within the ranks. Her example had sparked change not only in the platoon, but across the broader leadership structure. As days turned into weeks, Emily's influence continued to grow. Soldiers moved with renewed purpose, training with an awareness that went beyond the physical. They reflected on their own capacities for courage, resilience, and integrity. The story of her battle scars, once personal and hidden, had become a silent lesson embedded in the culture of the unit. Her courage had inspired others to act with similar determination, fostering a spirit of unity and mutual respect. Emily herself remained humble, aware that her journey was ongoing. She continued to train, lead, and support her platoon, but the impact of her actions lingered beyond daily routines. The colonel frequently sought her counsel, valuing her insight, not only for operational decisions, but also for understanding the human dimensions of leadership. Emily had become a guide, mentor, and living testament to the power of resilience, showing that courage extended far beyond the battlefield. In quiet moments, Emily reflected on the paradox of her influence. She had revealed her scars to silence ridicule and claim recognition, yet the lesson extended far beyond herself. Soldiers had learned to recognize unseen courage. Leaders had learned to see beyond assumptions, and the culture of the unit had shifted toward understanding, respect, and empowerment. Her scars, once symbols of past battles alone, had become catalysts for growth, empathy, and transformation across the base. The colonel, witnessing these changes, felt a deep sense of gratitude and humility. He realized that Emily Carter had not only survived extraordinary circumstances, but had also become a force of inspiration, education, and leadership. Her courage, resilience, and integrity had demonstrated the profound impact one individual could have on an entire unit. And he, too, had learned a critical lesson. Leadership was not just about command, it was about understanding, supporting, and fostering courage in those under one's charge. Emily's story, quietly unfolding within the confines of Fort Bragg, had become a model of how strength, resilience, and courage could ripple outward, transforming individuals and inspiring change. The unit was stronger, more cohesive, and more aware of the invisible battles each soldier faced. And through it all, Emily remained a steadfast presence, a living example of the power of perseverance, the value of empathy, and the enduring impact of courage. By the time the day ended, Emily walked through the base with a sense of quiet accomplishment. She had faced ridicule, revealed her scars, and influenced the perceptions and behaviors of every soldier around her. The colonel, once a symbol of judgment and authority, now embodied reflection and understanding. And the platoon, inspired by her example, moved forward with a renewed sense of purpose, unity, and respect for the hidden battles each person carried. Emily Carter's scars were no longer just marks of survival. They were a testament to courage, leadership, and the transformative power of resilience. Her story had become a living lesson, one that would echo through the ranks long after the morning drills had ended. And as the sun set over Fort Bragg, there was a sense of quiet pride, inspiration, and understanding that had been born from a single, courageous act. The sun dipped low over Fort Bragg, casting long shadows across the parade ground, and a sense of calm settled over the base. The events of the morning, Emily Carter's revelation, and the silent transformation it inspired had left an indelible mark. Soldiers moved with measured precision, their discipline now infused with understanding, empathy, and quiet admiration. What had begun as a routine PT session had become a turning point for the platoon, reshaping not only perceptions of strength, but the very fabric of leadership and camaraderie within the unit. Emily stood at the edge of the parade ground, jacket zipped and posture unwavering, surveying the soldiers she had quietly influenced. She reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point, the battles overseas, the injuries sustained, and the scars she had carried in silence for so long. Each scar, once a private testament to survival, had now become a beacon of courage and resilience. Her story had transformed ridicule into respect, assumptions into acknowledgement, and quiet endurance into a lesson for all who witnessed it. The colonel approached, his gait deliberate, carrying a mixture of reflection and respect in every step. He had observed Emily throughout the day, noting the subtle but profound ways she inspired the platoon. "Sergeant Carter," he said softly, voice low but sincere, you've taught us all something invaluable. Your courage, your resilience, and your leadership. They've changed the way we view strength, responsibility, and sacrifice. I owe you my deepest respect." Emily inclined her head slightly, acknowledging the words with quiet dignity. Recognition had never been her goal, but it was gratifying to see the lessons resonate so deeply. Around them, the soldiers of the platoon moved with a renewed sense of purpose. Private Daniels, now visibly more confident, guided newer recruits through drills with patience and encouragement. Others offered subtle gestures of support to one another, reflecting a culture shift that extended beyond discipline to empathy and understanding. Emily's influence had not only transformed perceptions of strength, it had instilled a new standard of conduct, morale, and cohesion across the platoon. Her courage had become contagious, demonstrating that leadership was as much about guiding hearts and minds as it was about commanding bodies. Emily's mind wandered briefly to the battlefield, to moments that had left her body scarred and her spirit tested. She recalled dragging wounded comrades to safety, navigating explosions, and enduring chaos that none of her peers could fully imagine. Those memories had been heavy burdens for years, but now they carried a new meaning. Each scar, each painful recollection, had contributed to the lesson she imparted: resilience. Courage and integrity are often invisible until revealed, and true strength is measured not by appearances, but by the ability to endure, lead, and inspire despite adversity. The colonel, sensing her reflection, spoke again. "You've shown me that leadership isn't just about orders or drills. It's about understanding the human element, recognizing hidden struggles, and fostering courage where it's needed most. Your scars, your experiences, they've taught me more than any manual or training exercise ever could." Emily listened quietly, aware of the profound weight of his acknowledgement. In that moment, the relationship between soldier and commanding officer shifted. Mutual respect had replaced skepticism, understanding had replaced assumption, and collaboration had replaced judgment. Across the parade ground, the soldiers watched the exchange with quiet reverence. They had witnessed courage, resilience, and leadership manifest in ways that transcended drills and ranks. Emily's example had sparked a subtle but powerful transformation within them, a recognition that every individual carried hidden battles, and that strength often lay beneath the surface, waiting for acknowledgement. The culture of the platoon had shifted, embracing empathy, respect, and an appreciation for the courage that exists beyond what the eye can see. Emily felt a rare sense of peace as she observed the platoon. The morning's tension had dissipated, replaced by a quiet pride in their growth and cohesion. The ridicule, judgment, and assumptions she had endured were now transformed into respect, admiration, and acknowledgement of the strength she had always carried. Her scars had become symbols not only of survival, but of leadership, resilience, and the power to inspire. Through a single act of revelation, she had changed lives, shifted perceptions, and left a lasting imprint on her platoon and leadership. The colonel, walking alongside Emily, reflected on the lessons he had learned. Authority alone had never been enough. True leadership required empathy, observation, and acknowledgement of the human elements that shape behavior and performance. Emily had demonstrated this in the most profound way through courage, composure, and integrity. Her influence had extended far beyond herself, reshaping the platoon's culture and inspiring a standard of leadership that would endure long after the day's drills concluded. Private Daniels approached Emily once more, his expression a mix of awe and determination. "Sergeant," he said softly, "I've learned something today that I'll carry with me for the rest of my career. Strength isn't always visible, courage isn't always loud, and leadership isn't just about giving orders. You've shown me what it truly means to endure and inspire." Emily gave him a small, reassuring smile. "Remember," she said, voice calm and steady, "everyone faces challenges. seen or unseen. True leadership is about helping others navigate them, and true courage is about facing them with integrity and resilience. As the sun dipped further, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, Emily reflected on her journey. The battle scar she had once hidden in silence had become a symbol of resilience, courage, and leadership. They were no longer a source of private pain. They had been transformed into a lesson that would resonate throughout the platoon, influencing behavior, morale, and understanding for years to come. Emily's courage had become a living testament to the power of endurance and the importance of empathy in leadership. The colonel, standing beside her, watched the platoon with a newfound respect and awareness. He realized that the lesson he had learned from Emily would influence every decision he made as a leader. He would approach his soldiers with greater understanding, recognize the invisible struggles they faced, and foster courage and resilience in ways he had never considered before. Emily's example had not only shaped the platoon, it had reshaped leadership itself. Even as evenings settled over Fort Bragg, Emily's presence continued to inspire. Soldiers moved with purpose, supported one another with empathy, and reflected on the lessons they had learned from her courage. The ripple effect of her revelation had extended far beyond the morning drills, touching hearts, shaping behaviors, and transforming perceptions. Emily Carter, scarred but unbroken, had become more than a soldier. She had become a symbol of enduring strength, quiet courage, and the transformative power of integrity and leadership. In her private moments, Emily allowed herself a deep breath, feeling the satisfaction that comes not from recognition, but from having influenced others through truth and example. She had faced ridicule, judgment, and the weight of unseen scars, yet she had emerged stronger, her courage now a beacon for others. Her journey was far from over, but the legacy she had begun to establish, the lessons in resilience, leadership, and empathy would endure, carried forward by every soldier who had witnessed her strength. The colonel finally broke the silence, his voice calm but resolute. "Sergeant Carter," he said, "thank you. You've changed more than the way we conduct drills or view performance. You've changed the way we understand courage, leadership, and strength. Today you've left a legacy that will guide this platoon and me for years to come." Emily inclined her head, her expression serene. The acknowledgement mattered, but more than that, she took solace in knowing that the lesson had been learned, internalized, and would endure far beyond the parade ground. As night fell over Fort Bragg, the platoon returned to their barracks, carrying with them a new perspective on courage, resilience, and leadership. Emily Carter's story, once hidden beneath uniform and silence, had become a living lesson that would inspire action, reflection, and growth across the unit. Her scars, once symbols of private struggle, had been transformed into a testament of enduring strength, quiet leadership, and the power to inspire change through integrity, courage, and resilience. Emily stood alone for a moment, gazing at the fading light, feeling a quiet sense of closure. She had revealed the truth of her experiences, transformed judgment into respect, and instilled a culture of understanding that would ripple outward for years to come. Her journey, scarred and challenging as it had been, had created something far greater than personal acknowledgement. It had fostered courage, empathy, and leadership that would endure long after she had left the parade ground. In the end, Emily Carter's legacy was clear. Courage is not always loud, strength is not always visible, and true leadership is measured not by authority, but by the ability to inspire, endure, and uplift those around you. Her scars, once private and hidden, had become symbols of resilience, lessons in empathy, and a lasting testament to the transformative power of quiet courage. And as the stars emerged above Fort Bragg, Emily felt the profound satisfaction of a mission accomplished, not on the battlefield, but in the hearts and minds of those she had silently led, inspired, and forever changed.